Hello everyone. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to add edge loops and add more geometry to your shapes so that they look smooth wherever you want them and have like beveled edges where they need to be like straightened up like this. So the first thing to have in mind is that when you want to add geometry for this stage of the work, you have to have UVs for the parts that you want to create UVs for. Okay, so at this stage, if you're working with your creature and if you want to have texture on any part, not the color, the texture, okay, and you're planning on having textures on body parts, at this stage you should have the UVs. Okay, because if you don't have the UVs and you start adding the edge loops, then it's gonna be really hard for you to create the UVs. As you can see here, this is absolutely not a creature, but that's a good example for this tutorial because I wanted to show you how to smooth the edges. So you can see here that okay, so I already have my UVs laid out, and you're gonna know in a couple of minutes why I'm saying this. So because the UVs are created and the shells are separated, when you add edge loops and smooth the meshes, the UVs are not gonna get messed up. The UVs are gonna be there, okay? As long as you're not extruding any faces, you're not changing something like that, the UVs are gonna stay untouched, and that's the nice thing about it. So, okay, so you should have your UVs, okay, before you do this. Because when you even if you duplicate your object, even if you export it, when you created the UVs, they're gonna stay there, okay? So I'm just gonna get rid of this. Okay, so let's say this is the hierarchy of my creature, which in my case is just 3 objects. But if you hold down shift and click on this plus, it's just going to open up everything. As you can see here, I kind of try to replicate like a version of a creature, which objects that are inside the groups and things like that. So I can show you what is the workflow to do this. Okay, first thing, as I've mentioned before, you never work on top of the nice low polygon version of your model for smoothing the mesh, okay? You're gonna need this later. Maybe you add some edge loops and you ruin something. You should always be able to get back to this version, okay? So just make sure that everything is set to 0 and you have freeze transformation for everything. What I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna just type in select -high, which I've used in previous tutorials. If you don't know what it is, go watch the previous tutorials. And while the top level of my hierarchy is selected, I'm just going to hit enter. Everything is going to be selected. I'm going to do modify freeze transformation if this is the neutral pose of your creature or whatever object that you have. Okay, so freeze transformation, and also I'm going to go to my custom tab here. I showed you how to put your the tools that you use the most here. I just went in and put the delete all by type history. Control shift, click, it's gonna come here. Okay, so because I already had one of these, I'm just gonna delete this. But so you know how it goes. So I deleted history and I have everything set to you know, modify transformation on this. Let's say the pivot points for the groups are all where they're supposed to be. I didn't adjust them because this was not my creature, but you have to have that already. Okay, so to create that high polygon version, we need to do some scene cleanup first, some housekeeping. So first, let's say this is the top hierarchy group of your creature or whatever thing that you have in the scene and you want to smooth the mesh. You need to do Control G to group it under itself. Just gonna name this gr-low poly. Okay, enter. So this is my low poly version. So now what I do is that I duplicate this group. I select on it on the outliner and I do Control D. Okay, so this is gonna be, this is now gonna be the groups that I want to work on. You can see that it's exactly the same thing. It has all the hierarchy, and that's the nice thing about grouping. Okay, so this one I'm gonna call the high poly. Well, not high poly, but let's say smooth preview. Yeah, let's just call this a smooth preview. Enter. So I'm going to click on the low poly group. So to hide this group from the scene, from the viewport, you can just click on it, on any object, any group, anything, and just hit H on your keyboard. It's going to become hidden. Okay, so now I know whatever changes I make, I'm not touching the low polygon group. And when you turn in this assignment and you're doing it on your creature, I want to see exactly the same thing. Your low polygon version should be always here, because the reason is that when you work on this version and at some point you're like, I don't know, I don't like this, you can always go back in here and grab that object and duplicate it, put it in the right order here. Okay, these are like best practices for workflows that allows you allow you to make mistakes. Okay, when you make mistakes, you just go grab it and start from like a couple of steps before, right? Okay. Okay. So everything is ready for us to try out the smooth mesh preview. So let's say for this object, whatever that is, I want to keep these hard edges, okay? But I want it to have like a nice bevel to it. If I hit 3 on my keyboard, you can see that it's going to turn out to this blob, right? But because you have already done the assignment on how the smooth mesh and you know, calculating the average between those points work, you probably know why this happens, because I only have these 2 points, and when I hit 3, this is the smooth mesh preview. Okay, this is some function that only lives in Maya. Okay, so if you export your object and bring it into another application, it's not going to look like this. Okay, but let's say, but as long as you're dealing with your objects in Maya, for example, you want to just animate it in Maya, you want to do whatever thing in Maya, you can use the smooth mesh preview without adding, like using the smooth mesh, the actual thing. Okay, so you're gonna know in a couple of minutes what I mean. Okay, so let's start. For this object to look like more what it is right now, the first thing would be to add more edge loops where I want the edges to keep their like straight lines. So I'm just gonna put the insert edge loop tool in my shelf, custom shelf here, holding down Control Shift. I'm just gonna click on it, it's gonna be here. So I'm gonna click on it and start adding, let's start with tool setting, multiple edges, multiple edge loops. This is the tool setting for insert edge loop tool. And I'm just gonna put it down to 1, so if I click on any of these edges, it just gives me 1 edge loop in the middle. Maybe 1 here, maybe 1 here. Okay, so now let's hit 3. As you can see, the edges are holding a little bit better because there are more edges that when Maya tries to calculate the smooth mesh preview, now it calculates the average between these 2 points and not these 2 points. And of course, the average of these 2 points is closer to a straight line. Okay. Going back to object mode, I want this shape to hold this hard edges. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go back to my insert edge loop tool, and I'm just going to add another edge loop here. And then another one here. I'm just adding 2 more edge loops at each side of this edge. Okay. So hitting 3, you can see that now this edge is more like what it needs to be, right? again, that's all the mathematics that goes behind it, but the idea is that if you want Maya to hold down the shape for one of the edges and smooth the rest, you need to put more edge loops around it. Right here, I think that's a good one. Maybe I add one in the middle here. Let's just go back to multiple edge loop tool. Getting 3, I can see now that this is a good look for my cube, right? Let me just get rid of the smooth mesh. You can see that this edge, if I hit 1, just look at this edge. This is really 3D, right? Nothing in the real world is like this, but this is more like it, right? So even if you decided that you want to keep the hard edges on your object, you need to kind of create this sort of bevel thing to it. And I'm not going to use bevel tool, and I encourage you not to use that because bevel creates n-gons unless you select the edge loops, okay? But I never use it because I don't want to create n-gons, and I expect you to not have n-gons in your meshes, because when you want to render them later, RenderMan is going to nag about it, and sometimes a smooth mesh doesn't work good with n-gons, so n-gons are something we need to avoid. That's why I don't like using the bevel tool, because you can easily create n-gons with it. So I'm not going to show you how to use the bevel tool. Okay, I rather have the insert edge loop tool here. So I'm just gonna do this for all the rest of this. Like here, just gonna, so whatever edge, the idea is whatever edge that I want to be hold like straighten up in 90 degrees, I'm gonna put 2 more edges around it, and I hit 3. If I see that the volume of the shape is not holding up, you can just add another one in the middle. I can see that this one in the middle was not necessary. This edge loop that I created here, I can just go ahead, double click on it. Because it is insert edge loop tool, I can just double click on it. It doesn't create any n-gons. It's a loop. You can always double click on the edges that you created, and it's not ruining your geometry. Okay, so I'm just gonna delete this one, go back to my, so I'm just going between 1, which is like this hard edge look preview, and 3, which is a smooth mesh preview. Okay, so again, I'm just gonna put a couple of 2 more edge loops around here so it holds this 90-degree bend here. Here, probably one here. Yeah, I think it looks good. 3, okay. So if that's something you like if you want this to be, hold on, Q. If you want it to look like this, that's fine. Have this bend to it. But if you want it to hold this edge as hard as this, you can always go in and add more edge loops, right? Like I haven't added another edge loop underneath this, that's why it's not holding its shape correctly, like the way, really at 90 degrees. So I'm just gonna add another edge loop here. Hit 3 on my keyboard. Now I can see that it exactly looks like it's holding its volume, it's holding its shape, but it is not looking as 3D as the other objects, okay? So for this one, I'm gonna do the same, or maybe not. You can figure those out on your own as part of the assignment. The other thing that I want to show you is that, okay, so this is the smooth mesh preview. What does it mean? That this is the preview that only lives in Maya. Even when you want to render your shapes, you can have them render in hard edge preview or in the smooth mesh preview, okay? The thing is, sometimes you want to, let's say, print your 3D print your objects, okay? So if you want to 3D print your objects, you cannot use this because this is a preview, Okay, this is going to give you an idea of how your shape is going to look like when you actually go in and smooth the mesh. And what do I mean by that? Okay, so I created these edge loops, and the look that I get is exactly what I want for the smooth mesh. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate this group again. Okay, I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to hide this because I'm not going to work on this. For this one, I'm just going to call this smooth mesh, the actual one. Okay, so I click on this object, then I go to mesh smooth. This is something we used this for a cube, right, before that, and you saw that how it turned it into a sphere without adding edge loops, right? So I'm just going to hit smooth, and you can see here that I get more geometry. It kind of divided each faces into two, right? And this is the look that I want. If you have objects that are not looking good with division 1, you still, like, you have a smooth faces and they're still not looking as smooth, you can go up another level to 2, okay? But don't push it more than 2, okay? Maya is not the best application to deal with a smooth mesh, like really high polygon versions of things, okay? But again, this is the high polygon version, and this is the smooth mesh preview, which you can use in Maya. This one is forever for when you want to export your objects, and for example, let's do 3D printing out of it, or open it in ZBrush, other 3D applications, and work on it. It's a good thing that now you have a low polygon version, smooth mesh preview version, which you can use in Maya, and this smooth mesh, which you can use, like, let's say for 3D printing. This needs to be exactly like this. If you smooth the mesh on the smooth mesh preview, this is wrong, you're gonna lose point. Or the same thing, for the low polygon version, you need to have it in the scene, okay? So I'm gonna just hide this smooth mesh, go back to my smooth preview. And so here's the nice thing that I was emphasizing from the beginning: don't rush the smooth mesh preview or the smooth mesh because you haven't have the UVs yet. So now if you go to your UVs, turn on the checker box, the UVs are not affected, right? The UVs are there exactly where they needs to be because you haven't extruded anything, you just added edge loops, but because you have already had these shells separated and laid out and nice and cleaned with checkerboard, checker map showing correctly, now you get to work on the UVs, you know, or even apply the same texture that you used for the low polygon version to this, and everything should look correct. Okay, that's the nice thing. And now I finally get to tell you why it is important to create the UVs with the low polygon version. Okay, I think that's it. So go ahead and create the smooth mesh preview for these two objects, and then yeah, we're going to talk about your projects later. Okay.